Are there any other items?
Yes. I'd like to pull 12 through 15.
Okay. Okay, so I have 12 through 15 by Ballard. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Guys, I have a couple of other just questions for the lay of the land.
Mr. Washington,
Mr.
Ms. Barrett,
Washington.
if you come back to the podium, please, we have commissioners on the board with questions.
So on these materials and these books, I am concerned, and I would have rather done this behind the scenes, so I will not read the article that I'm looking at. But I'm concerned. I was looking and researching a little bit about the ALA, and then they had an event, and the way the article states it, it sounds like we were defending putting explicit books in front of children. And I want to make sure we're not doing that with our money. And honestly, and researching ALA, you go through their tenets, and one of them is literacy. That's great. One of them is transforming libraries. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but there's probably about 9 of them, and a lot of the other ones are just, it's just words that are used to push a woke agenda. And so I want to make sure that, that if this is taxpayer money, I mean, is that what we're doing with this? Sure. Please don't what a weak argument. How much money are we spending on this library? And because someone pays to actually buy the individual book, we're going to say it's not taxpayer money? Obviously, we have used taxpayer money to fund the library system, and I am not comfortable with that being used to also push a woke agenda. And this article quotes people that are employed by Manatee County, and it looks very much like they are the ones defending when a parent, literally it says, in a situation where a parent comes and says, this has explicit material and drawings, I'm not okay with this being in the children's section. And then we have 2 different library professionals, one of them joining us today, giving their way of redirecting the parent, not responding to the complaint or taking out the material, but their way of redirecting the parent and protecting, I say protecting, I mean, it's basically circumventing the parent's right to choose what the child reads and to raise the child the way that they see fit to raise them. If a parent wants to go get an explicit book, that's a different discussion, but I'm concerned. When I read this article just last night, I would have spoken with offline about this, would have preferred to do it offline, but please tell me I'm wrong and that that's not what we're doing here with our library system. I want to be wrong. Thank you.
Ballard, she pulled items 12 through 15. If possible, you want to hold those all together. I'll give you the floor now.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to address them all together because I think that the concerns that I have relate to all of the issues. So these are grants for library materials, I believe, for the new library. My only concern is the restrictions that are placed on the materials that can be purchased with those grants. Obviously, I'm in favor of getting the best and the most materials for our library and not spending taxpayer dollars on that. But I'm just curious and maybe concerned about any restrictions that are placed on the materials that can be purchased with said grants.
All right. Is that on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for asking your question.
State your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tammy Parrott, Library Services Manager for the county. The $100,000 that is coming from the Friends of the Lakewood Ranch Library does have some restrictions, but the restrictions are only that we use a portion for large print materials, children materials, and Spanish language materials. There are no other restrictions on any of the funds for the Lakewood Ranch. There's no restriction on the funds that are coming from the Library Foundation, and there are the only restrictions on the Eaton funds is that it's used for the local history group. And the $55,000 is actually a reimbursement for the master plan disbursement.
Okay, wonderful. That actually answers my questions perfectly, and I appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.
May I dialogue?
Yes, ma'am.
And we do have our library's work session coming up. I believe it's scheduled for next month, where we can discuss all of these things further. My biggest concern with this funding was, what are we going to be required to purchase materials that are not in line with the will of the majority of taxpayers in Manatee County? And if not, should we be rejecting that and then paying for the books ourselves, therefore choosing the types of books that we feel are appropriate? It sounds to me like we're not being required to purchase any certain types of books that are not appropriate or that push a certain agenda. So I personally am fine with accepting the funds, but we are going to have further discussions on libraries next month.
So does knowing that a workshop is coming and then you having the opportunity to sit down with Hopes and Washington and Parrott, does that suffice for now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, appreciate
Okay,
it.
great. Thank you. We've closed public comment. There are no commissioners on the board for discussion. Motion has been made by Commissioner Cruz to approve items 12 through 15, which we are holding together. The second was made by Van Ostenbridge, and we may cast our votes at this time. Madam Clerk, items 12 through 15 held together passed by a vote of 6-0.